Welcome everybody, and thanks for stopping my channel. Today's video is going to cover cleaning your keg, sanitizing your keg, disassembling it to sanitize and clean it, reassembling all the pieces, and then of course filling it with your favorite beverage. So if you have the time, I really appreciate it if you hit the like button. It really helps my page. And if you want to subscribe, that way you can get notified next time I post a video. I would really appreciate it. And hopefully you get something out of today's video. Let's roll the title.
Alright guys, so here's my setup. I've already put an entire 5 gallons of OxyClean Free and Clear into the keg overnight just to give it a good cleaning. I recommend that you use the OxyClean. Make sure you get the Free and Clear so there's no dyes or scents in it. It's the best for cleaning all of your equipment, not just kegs, anything to do with brewing, because there's no scent, there's no dye. And basically it's like a scrubbing bubble. You put it in, add the hot water, and just leave it, and it will pretty much clean for you. So I've already done that with the keg and all the parts. As you can see, I've disassembled the keg, and all the different O-rings and everything are disconnected in that little basin. I am now going to fill about, I don't know, 2.5 gallons of sanitizer inside the keg, and also put some in that little basin there for the different parts. And then I'll save the sanitizer solution, put the keg back together, and I'll run sanitizer using the CO2. I'll run it through the lines of my kegerator to clean the lines. And then I will fill it with my new beer. So we'll take you to the next step here. Alright guys, so you can see maybe inside a little bit there. I've got about 2.5 gallons of sanitizer in the keg. You don't need a full thing. I'll just swish it around, and then that's going to get pumped through my lines. And then of course I put Star San inside the little basin there on the floor with the bits and bobs that I disconnected from the keg. And I don't know if you can see, I'll try to come a little closer, but I removed as much as I could the Teflon from the actual connectors because you'll need to put new Teflon tape. It's super cheap, get it at the hardware store. Don't skimp on that, because even a little bit of Teflon tape will really help ensure that you don't have any leaks. Alright everybody, so hopefully you can get a good idea of what's going on here. I've taken all the parts from the keg and I've placed them on this towel here on my kitchen counter. Just to give you an idea of everything that got disconnected, you'll see here I have some keg lube. This is basically food grade petroleum jelly, and you'll put this around most of your gaskets, like your O-rings and your main gasket. Basically it does two things. It helps protect it and make it last longer, so you don't have to replace the O-ring as often. And also it helps create a much tighter seal. A lot of times when you might have a leak, a gas leak or something, it's fixed by just a little bit of this this lube. So that's super important. Also, other than that, the other thing here that's not maybe something you've seen before is I do have this floating dip tube. Basically this sits down, well, it floats. This is like a bobbit. It floats on top of your beer, and it pulls the beer from there. So you're always pulling your beer from the top of the keg instead of the bottom, and that way it helps you get a nice clean beer without any yeast or anything that's flocculated out. And then when it gets down to the bottom, it sort of lays flat, and you're going to get, you know, most of your beer out of there. Although I'll be honest with you, I never quite get that far. I can't drink the beer that fast. I usually bottle it up and give it away. So that's what I have here. Basically, the only other thing I can really show you to on this shot is you'll notice there's a difference between these two. One has little notches and one doesn't. This one does not. The one without notches, I'm sure you've seen this on other videos, but this will be your liquid, and this has a little like hash marks or little hash marks or you know, marks on it. That one is the gas. So the only other thing that's confusing, I mean, you can kind of see where you're going to put certain O-rings back in with a little bit of the keg lube on there. When it comes to the springs, it can be confusing because I don't know if you can see the spring is shorter on one end than the other end. It's like a spiral. So the question is, how does that go in? Well, this guy goes in first with a little stubby end. You can tell it's a stubby end because it fits perfectly in the end of it there. And then when you're looking at it, if I put the fat end, sorry, it's maybe not the right term, but the fat end of the spring in, it's going to fit over the top of it. So instead, I'm going to make sure that I put the narrow end of the ring of the spring down, so that when I put this in, it has more surface. I don't know, let me pull this out, maybe you can see it better. So this is going to push up against the spring. So obviously if it's this way, it's got more surface. If I do it the other way, the thinner end, it just doesn't have the same, it doesn't fit quite the same. So you want this to hit against the fat end of the spring. So you're basically just putting it back together with a little bit of lube and tightening it back up. I guess I can show you, it's not in the shot, but you can go out and get really helpful to get a little socket wrench and a connector. This is for bolting these on, right? These things. You could take one with you to the store just to see the fit. I mean, this one says it's 11/16. I don't know if that's going to fit every keg, so don't just go buy one that's 11/16. Make sure it would fit your keg. That's probably pretty standard. And then if you have a little socket wrench to pop on there, it just makes it easier for, you know, cranking and tightening or loosening that from the keg. So that's that. I'm going to move the camera over so you can see me sort of putting it all back together. Alright everybody, so as you can see, I got a little setup here showing you the top of my keg. So the first step here for getting it ready for the next beer is going to be to put on some fresh Teflon tape around the tops there, which will help ensure that it doesn't leak, hopefully. It's another little bit of insurance, basically. Now, this Teflon tape is sort of a pain in the butt to work with, in my opinion. What I try to do is actually cut a piece of it first. People have different ways of doing it. I've just found, for me, that works the best. And then if you pull too tight, it's gonna rip it apart. But basically, that's that. So that's how you put on the Teflon tape. You always want to put on fresh Teflon tape every time you do this. I'm going to spin this. Remember, this is still full of sanitizer. The reasoning again for that is because I'm going to actually hook it up. Once I have it all put back together, I'll re-hook it up to my keg with the CO2. I'll use the CO2 to force that sanitizer that's in there through all the beer lines, and that'll clean the beer lines. Alright, so let's get this side if I can. This really is sort of a pain to get these stupid tape on here, but like all things, it's worth it in the end to do it. And I'm not the best at doing these kinds of things, but that just proves that you don't have to be 100% perfect. But it does help to make sure that you try to get it in the seams there. So there you go. So that's how you put the Teflon on. Anytime you have something like that where you're screwing stuff in, you want to use a little bit of Teflon if you're setting up your gas lines or whatever. So that's the first step for putting this back together, is fresh Teflon. You can't reuse Teflon, so whatever is there, when you unscrew it all, take it off and put a fresh strip of Teflon. It doesn't cost hardly anything, and it'll save you a lot of heartache if you end up having a lot of leaks. By the way, I don't know if this is visible, but on the actual keg, you'll notice like mine has an in. It's hard to read, but it says in, and the other side here says out. And I have it labeled. I don't know if I can push this forward, but yeah, you can see here it says beer. Or some people like to say that the liquid line, you know, or gas line is over here. So anyway, beer is the out, obviously, because beer is coming out. The in line here is going to be for gas, you know, for CO2. All right, so we'll go on to the next step, which is putting back together and relubricating everything. All right, folks, so next step is to kind of put stuff back together again. So we've shown this to you already. This is this is the gas line in. Let me turn this so you can maybe see it a little better from this angle. This is the gas line. It has the little notches in the bottom of it. I've already put the O-ring back on the top of it and put a little bit of keg lube on it. Next comes this little piece. I want to say it's the poppet is what it's called. Again, I put the O-ring back on with a little bit of keg lube, and then it goes in this way. You'll know it goes in. Sometimes you gotta sort of get it just right, but you'll know because it sort of sits and fits right in the end there and kind of plugs up that hole. So far I got those two pieces. The next piece that's going to go in is the spring. We talked about this as well. You want the smaller end of the spring, right? Because it's the larger end of the spring. So the spring goes in like so. I'm putting it in with the narrow end towards the top, and it kind of goes in and wraps around what's that little piece in there. And then you have one more piece. These are sort of interchangeable, the gas and but there's this line here that pushes up against the gas line, basically like the post on it. So this is just going to slip right down there, as obviously the O-ring helps the seal and keep it. So this is just going to flip upside down, and God willing, I'm just going to hand tighten it first for now, until it's sort of hand tight. And that's that. So that side's done. Now we're going to do the gas side, or sorry, the beer side, the liquid side. Let's see if I can get you a better angle there. It's the same exact thing. I've already put the keg lube. This is the liquid side of the attachment. I'm going to put the little piece, little poppet in there. The way it sits against there. Again, it's sort of hard to show on camera, and then I'm going to put the spring in. Remember, the narrow end goes in first. So now the spring is in there, and then I'm going to put the post right into there. I'm just going to flip this upside down, and if I can get it to tighten down and grab hold. It's not usually that. Oh, hang on. This guy is causing me a little bit of problems here. Well, take it back. There we go. It's caught on something there. All right. So just hand tighten it down on top of that Teflon, so there's very little chance of any kind of leakage. All right. So the last step here in this is you want to tighten these down. They don't have to be crazy tight. So I've got this little socket wrench. As soon as I hit it tight, that's it. I give it like a little bit of a tug right here. That's it. So they don't have to be insanely tight and locked down. Just do the best you can. So this is going to be the next piece, which is the floating dip tube that I kind of showed you earlier. It's got a little sanitizer still in the tube. That's all right. So this is a little more difficult. This piece here, the end of it, has to actually connect, no clamp or anything. It just push it up into the, and I can't really show you on camera, but you push it onto that post. Also, you want to make sure that this is on the beer side, because it's the liquid it's going to be pulling up. If you end up having a lot of trouble getting it on there, you can always heat up, like run it under hot water, and it'll help soften the tube a little bit. This is pretty good. I've got it right as far up basically as it's going to be able to go. I'm not going to get it any further, so I've never had one just pop off on me, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. All right, so with that done, there's one last piece, and that's the lid, right? So I've already put keg lube on the top of this O-ring that goes around. In my opinion, that's the piece that's the most important to have the keg lube on. It creates this really nice seal, and I'm just gonna, boom, snap it shut. So now I can hook this up to the CO2 line and run that sanitizer through my main beer line. And then when that's done, I'll empty the sanitizer out of here. I'll save some of it into a little spray bottle for future use on other things, and then I can fill it with beer. So let's get started. Alright guys, so this is the back of my kegerator. Sorry for the shaky camera, I gotta hand hold this one. But as you can see, I've got my CO2 tank in the back there. Right now, I know it says that it's somewhere around 8 psi, but I actually have the gas turned off right there, and I also have this little turn dial completely closed. So the gas is actually not on right now at all. So that's the first thing to note. Secondly, let me come back over slowly. There's the keg full of sanitizer. I'm going to open this refrigerator door, and we're going to hook up the lines. Alright, so I apologize here, I'm doing this one-handed. So this is the liquid line. You can see the old beer is in there. And you can see I'm going to hook it up here to the line that says beer. And I'll try to do this one-handed. There's another style of keg, but this one's pretty simple. Just pops on like that. Make sure it's all the way on. And you'll see there's the gas line back there. I'm actually going to remove this little bucket that I was using just to make sure the beer that was left in the line didn't get everywhere. This is the gas line. So I'm just going to pop that on. And we have to do something first before this is going to work. First of all, I've got to turn the gas on. So first thing is I'm going to do is release this all the way open. Alright. This should all be fine. I'm going to open the valve, and it's going to start. I can even hear it. I don't need a lot of pressure. However, let me show you a little trick here. You do have to purge, because this is full of air. So you're not going to get a whole lot here. So I purged it by just pulling on this release valve. It lets the air that's in the top of the tank above your sanitizer or beer out, and CO2 in on top of it. So last thing here I want to do for cleansing is I'm going to open this tap, and we should get some sanitizer after the beer. There's the old beer, and as you can see it's flowing clearly now, which means that is now sanitizer. And that is exactly what we want. Alright, so normally I let just about all of the sanitizer out of this. What I'm going to do here is actually put a spray bottle underneath it to catch the clean sanitizer. And that way I can keep the sanitizer that's left, and I can leave it in the spray bottle and just use it for little things that I come up with along the way, like needing to sanitize a bottle or something. Then you don't have to make a whole solution of sanitizer up that way. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll be ready to empty the sanitizer out of the keg and fill it with beer. Okay guys, so now I'm going to actually move the beer into the keg. Let me sort of pan up here, you can get an idea. This is my fermenter. It's a little fancy, but I love the stainless steel. It's a little warm in the house right now. You probably can't see it on camera, but that keg is sitting at about 77 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a little bit warm for an ale. But I use Kvike yeast. This is an experimental beer. I did a raw, no boil basically, grapefruit honey ale. And because it was so hot, you guys, it was 110 degrees here when I was making this. And I thought, what the heck, I'm going to try this Kvike yeast, and either it's going to be terrible or it's going to be okay. I don't know. I'm just going to peek real quick here. You know, it's not terrible. You can see there's some scum on the top, but that's not necessarily, you know, I'll be honest with you, it doesn't look like mold or anything. I just wanted to show you that sometimes there's stuff on top that, you know, some people will be like, oh, I'm not drinking that, but it's pretty normal. It's pretty normal. You can tell when there's mold. It'll smell funny. It starts to grow up the sides of it. So I will leave, in fact, I'm going to take this lid off here and just set it aside. And I will leave, and I don't know if you can see the tube. So instead of siphoning, I use a tube that goes all the way down to the bottom of the keg. And this particular fermenter is nice because the actual spigot pivots, and there's a piece inside here that can pivot down, and so you can actually get most of your beer out. So I'm going to let this start draining. I'm just smelling it. I don't smell anything bad in there. I really don't. None of that stuff on top. I think that's just yeast and hops by the looks of it. I'm almost guaranteeing it's hops. So the deal is I actually did a hop tea when I made this. So I didn't actually boil the hops with the beer itself. Again, this was a no boil, so and that line around the side is just a Croissant line. It's nothing to be too alarmed about. I can actually see clear enough to the bottom here. I'm just keeping an eye out so I can try to, you know, this was also, interestingly enough, it was an experiment. I didn't get a full 5 gallons. I think I got about 4 gallons out of this. I don't think I'll do a no boil again. It was, like I say, an experiment to try, but I don't really feel like it was that successful. I mean, looks like it turned out okay, but now I'm smelling something that I'm not too pleased with. There is a type of, wow, there's very little flocculation on the bottom from the yeast. I don't know if you can see this or not. Maybe right around the tube where it's kind of touching the bottom. I'm going to turn it off right there. Interesting. It's interesting looking yeast on the bottom. I guess not how I normally see it. Anyway, trying to remember if I put, I'll have to look at the recipe and see what I put on it. But anyway, so now it's completely inside the keg. And now what we'll do is we'll seal off the keg. And then, whoop, I did not expect that to dribble. Alright guys, so I'm ready to go ahead and put this beer into the refrigerator and hook it up. So I've got the beer line, as you can see right here, and I'm going to go ahead and start with the gas line because it's a little closer. Gas is almost always an orange from my experience. So gas line is now good and secure. And the liquid line, which as you can see is now full of sanitizer. It's totally sanitized. So we'll go ahead and put that on. Good. And I don't know if I can do this with one hand, but I need to move this into the refrigerator, so we'll give it a shot. Sort of wiggle it in there. Sorry for this shot. That's not a very good shot, is it? Well, anyway, sort of wiggle it in. close up the refrigerator, and I will take you around to the back side here. I will go ahead and loosen up the gas all the way up, open, and then I'm going to release the gas valve here, and now it's letting gas in. We'll give it a second. I'm going to adjust this till it hits about 12 psi. Give or take. And now I'm bringing it back out to the front. We're going to purge it. So I grab the top here, the purge, and it starts to fill up again. Give it a second. Purge it again. Then it fill up again. And one more purge. The amount of times you purge it is up to you. I do it about 3 times. You'll need to recheck your valve from time to time here. Like I say, I keep mine around 12 psi. And so it looks like it's pretty good for right now. So that's it. I'll let it sit here for a week. Every day I'll check to make sure it's still at 12 psi. And after about a week of sitting on it, it will be fully carbonated and ready to drink. And fingers crossed that it's not terrible, because this is a total experiment. So it may be a disaster. We shall see. Until next time, happy brewing.